She was just a poor cleaner, fighting to survive. He was a mysterious blind man, sitting in the rain. But when Ava risked everything to help a stranger, she had no idea he was secretly a billionaire CEO, and that one act of kindness would change her life forever. From betrayal and heartbreak to justice and love, this is a story that will break you and heal you all at once. Who really was Eli, and why did he choose her? Where are you watching from? Drop your city below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and awaken the soul. Ava Moore had grown used to the sound of the rain tapping on her broken rooftop like a lullaby that never soothed. At 22, she had endured more than many people twice her age. There was a time long ago when her mother hummed soft lullabies while brushing her thick brown hair, and her father kissed her forehead before work, calling her his little architect because she loved drawing buildings. But that was another life. A life before illness stole her mother and an accident claimed her father within the same year. Since then, Ava had survived on grit, prayer, and an unshakable belief that kindness would someday find its way back to her. She lived in a tiny studio tucked behind an auto shop, just big enough to stretch her arms and touch both walls. Her mattress lay on the floor, patched at the corners. A single wobbly chair sat beside a plastic table, and a jug of filtered water leaned against the wall like a quiet companion. Despite it all, Ava kept it spotless. Clean floors, folded sheets, a flower made of paper on her windowsill, proof that beauty could live anywhere. This morning, the rain poured harder than usual, slapping the pavement like it had something to prove. Ava stood in front of a cracked mirror, tying her curls into a low bun. Her blouse was faded but pressed, and her black slacks had been mended at the knees more times than she could count. She slipped on her worn flats, grabbed her canvas tote, and looked around the room one last time before stepping into the storm. She walked fast, her umbrella barely shielding her from the angry sky. The streets buzzed with honking cars and the whoosh of tires slicing through puddles. Lexwell Industries was only a 30-minute walk, but in this rain it felt like a marathon. Today was her first day working there as a janitorial assistant, a job she had begged for after months of rejections. The pay was low, but the building was famous, sleek and tall, built with glass and steel like something out of a dream. For Ava, it was a new start. As she neared the shimmering towers of Lexwell, she slowed down. Her breath fogged in front of her face, and her heart fluttered, not from the cold, but from nerves. That's when she saw him. Just to the right of the entrance, sitting on a low stone bench drenched in rain, was a young man. He had no shoes. His shirt was soaked, clinging to his chest, and a white cane leaned beside him. His hair was matted, and his head hung low, rain dripping from his brow. People passed him without a glance, stepping wide to avoid his presence. Ava paused. Her instincts told her to keep moving. She couldn't afford to be late, but something about him made her stop. Just as she took a step toward him, a blur zipped past. A teenage boy darted forward, snatched something from beside the man, and ran. The man jerked up, confused, reaching blindly for the space the boy had just invaded. Ava's eyes widened. He was blind. Without thinking, she shouted, "Hey!" and sprinted after the thief. Her flats slapped the wet concrete, splashing water up her legs. The boy was fast, zigzagging between strangers, but Ava chased him, weaving through the crowd like she had a purpose bigger than fear. At the edge of the block, he climbed a short gate, but Ava grabbed the back of his hoodie and yanked. The wallet slipped from his hand and fell. He hissed, kicked out, and bolted, vanishing into the storm. Panting, soaked, and shaking, Ava picked up the wallet. It was worn, soft leather with a single braided cord wrapped around it. She turned back, clutching it tight, and walked toward the blind man, her chest still heaving. "Sir," she said softly, touching his arm. "I got it back." He turned his head toward her voice, his face calm but tired. "You ran after him?" She nodded, pressing the wallet into his hand. "You're safe now." The rain kept falling, but Ava no longer noticed. Eli's fingers closed around the wallet, his movements careful, almost reverent. He didn't smile, but there was a subtle shift in his posture, like something inside him had softened. "Thank you," he murmured. His voice was low and steady, and somehow it wrapped around Ava like a warm blanket on a cold day. "You didn't have to do that." Ava shook her head, water still dripping from her soaked bun. I couldn't just watch, she said simply, because really, what more was there to say? She stood there beside him, both of them drenched, her shoulders rising and falling as she caught her breath. Around them, people still walked by, some with curiosity, some with indifference, but no one stopped. Her eyes dropped to his wrist as he cradled the wallet, and again she noticed the silver watch. Elegant, precise, with tiny glints that caught the dim morning light. It didn't belong on a man barefoot in the rain. Maybe it was fake, she told herself, or maybe it had been a gift before things got hard. Either way, it wasn't her business. I'm Ava, she said after a beat. He nodded slowly. Eli? They stood there in silence, the rain washing the grime from the sidewalks, the air thick with something unspoken. Then Ava glanced at the time. Her stomach twisted. She was late, really late. The kind of late that could cost her the job she'd begged for. Her eyes flicked to the towering Lexwell building behind them, its mirrored glass catching flashes of stormy sky. The entrance seemed farther away now, more intimidating than ever. She looked back at Eli. He was still trembling slightly, his wet clothes clinging to his thin frame. He didn't ask for help, didn't complain. But something about his quiet stillness, his calm in the middle of so much chaos, made her chest ache. Without a word, she stepped closer and held her umbrella over his head. It sagged in the middle where a spoke had snapped, but it was better than nothing. You need this more than I do, she said. Eli turned his face toward her voice. What about you? Ava gave a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. I'm used to getting wet. She hesitated. The cold was beginning to settle into her bones. Her fingers were numb, but she reached into her tote and pulled out 2 crumpled bills, her only cash for the day. It was supposed to buy lunch and her bus ride home, but she pressed it into Eli's hand anyway. Get something warm to eat, and maybe a cab, she said. Eli's hand tensed around the money, then slowly opened, offering it back. I can't take what you need to survive. You need it more, she insisted. But he shook his head. You've already given me enough. Ava looked at him for a long moment, the rain painting streaks across her face. Then, impulsively, she made a decision. Okay, she said. Then you're coming with me. Eli's brows lifted slightly. Where? To my job, she said. I don't know where else to take you, but I'm not leaving you here. She gently took his arm, guiding him as they crossed the slick street. People stared, some with confusion, some with judgment, but Ava kept walking. Her shoes squeaked across the marble floors as she pushed through Lexwell's glass doors. The security guard raised a brow, but she gave him a quick nod and didn't stop. She led Eli to the janitor's section and found a narrow corner near the back, just a bench beside a cart of cleaning supplies. It's not much, she said, helping him sit, but it's dry. He didn't argue. She handed him a towel from her cart. Dry off. I'll be nearby. Thank you, Ava, he said, his voice quiet but sincere. She smiled, though he couldn't see it, and turned away with her mop and bucket. Her uniform clung to her body, her shoes squelched with every step, but as she scrubbed the floors of the shining corporate palace, her heart felt unexpectedly light. She had nothing. But today, she had done something that mattered. As Ava moved from one corridor to another, the scent of lemon disinfectant trailed behind her mop like a faint shadow. Her arms ached from scrubbing, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the quiet corner where Eli sat. Was he cold? Had he dried off? Was he hungry? She hadn't eaten anything herself, but her concern wasn't for her own empty stomach. It was for the man with the quiet voice and steady presence, the man everyone else ignored. Whispers buzzed through the hall like bees trapped in glass. Ava paused at the edge of a polished hallway, watching as clusters of office girls leaned into one another, whispering, giggling, checking their reflections in their phones. He's back, one said. No way. The CEO? Yeah, the real one. I thought he was still in Europe. Apparently, he flew in last night. They say he's young, like early 30s, and a squeal, super hot. Ava shook her head and rolled her eyes lightly. She had no time for fairy tales. Her break was minutes away, and her mind was on Eli. She rinsed her mop, parked the bucket beside the wall, and rushed to the janitor's closet. Her plan was simple. Grab a few dollars from her locker, run across the street to the bakery, buy 2 meat pies, and get back before anyone noticed. But when she rounded the corner, she heard a sharp voice that made her blood freeze. What is this filthy creature doing here? Ava's heart dropped. Vanessa Klein stood in her designer heels and pencil skirt, glaring down at Eli like he was something sticky on the bottom of her Louboutin. Her voice sliced through the hallway with calculated venom. Who let this homeless thing into the building? Eli sat just as Ava had left him, back straight, hands folded over his cane, expression unreadable. He turned his head slightly at the sound of her voice, but didn't flinch. Ava quickened her steps. I said, Vanessa repeated loudly, who brought this trash inside? A few staff glanced their way, then quickly looked away. No one moved. No one dared interrupt Vanessa. Ava's feet pounded against the floor. Stop it, she said sharply. I brought him. Vanessa blinked, then narrowed her eyes. Of course, you. He wasn't bothering anyone, Ava continued. It's raining. He was soaked. He's blind. Vanessa crossed her arms, lips curling into a sneer. And this is a corporate office, not a shelter. He's human. And you're a cleaner, Vanessa snapped. Know your place. Ava's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. Respect doesn't come with job titles. It comes with how you treat people. Vanessa's smile faded. You've just made a big mistake. Ava's voice didn't waver. Maybe, but I'd rather make a mistake for standing up than stay silent like the rest of you. Vanessa glared. Your shift's over. Take your stray with you. Ava turned to Eli, ignoring the eyes watching, the silence that pressed like a wall against her back. Come on, she said softly, placing her hand on his arm. Let's go. Outside, the rain had faded into a drizzle. They walked quietly down the street. Eli didn't speak at first, but when he did, his voice was calm. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, Ava said. They did. Most people, they wouldn't have said anything. Well, she said, adjusting her scarf to cover his head. I'm not most people. He turned toward her voice. I can tell. By the time they reached her place, the sky had darkened. Her door creaked open, revealing the tiny room she called home. She helped him inside. It's not much, she whispered, but it's dry. Eli stepped inside slowly, tapping the floor lightly with his cane. It's peaceful, he said. She handed him a dry towel and a blanket, then moved to her tiny stove, lighting the burner with practiced ease. She boiled rice, added seasoning, and stirred quietly, her eyes occasionally drifting to the man seated on her mattress. When she brought the food, they ate in silence. Then her curiosity finally won. That watch, she said, pointing gently. It doesn't match the rest of you. Eli smiled faintly. I get that a lot. Is it? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, let's just say I've had better days. Ava didn't press, but something inside her whispered. There's more to this man than he's letting on. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the faded curtain in Ava's tiny room, casting soft patterns on the cement floor. She moved around quietly, careful not to wake Eli, who was still resting on the mattress, one arm draped over the blanket. The night had been calm for once. No thunder, no leaks, just the soft, rhythmic sound of his breathing and the peace that came from not being alone. Ava boiled water on her little stove and made a thin porridge with the last of her maize flour. She added 2 slices of bread she had picked up the day before. Then, kneeling beside him, she gently touched Eli's arm. I have to go to work, she whispered. There's food here. Please eat. Eli stirred, his voice low and hoarse. Thank you, Ava. She gave him a small, warm smile and stepped out into the early morning. The city was already alive with blaring horns and footsteps. By the time she reached the Lexwell building, Vanessa was already there, standing in front of the mirrored wall, adjusting her perfect curls and reapplying her lipstick with military precision. When her eyes caught Ava's reflection behind her, her mouth curled with cold contempt. She said nothing, just turned away sharply, her silence louder than any insult. Inside, Jessica, the strict HR officer, was barking orders. Ava, less walking, more working. You think we pay you to stroll? Ava mumbled a quiet apology and got straight to her mop, her shoes still damp from the walk. Hours passed. The building buzzed with tension and chatter. Then, without warning, Vanessa's voice pierced the air like a siren. My bracelet, my gold chain, it's missing. Staff began to gather, murmuring as Vanessa stormed out of her office, pointing at her open handbag like it was a crime scene. I left it here, she said dramatically. It's gone. Someone took it. Jessica stepped forward, frowning. Are you sure you didn't? I'm sure, Vanessa snapped. It was a gift from my sister in Milan. This is theft. Meanwhile, Ava was in the restroom, wiping down the sink area when something glimmered near the trash bin. She bent down and picked it up, a delicate gold chain, perfectly intact. Her brows furrowed. She turned on her heel, ready to return it immediately. But as soon as she stepped into the hallway, Vanessa's voice rang out again, this time sharper than ever. "You!" she screeched, pointing straight at Ava. "You stole it." Ava froze, the chain still in her hand. "No," she said quickly. "I found it by the—" "Don't lie," Vanessa cut her off, stalking forward. "You brought a vagrant into this company yesterday, and now you're stealing? You're poor, desperate? Of course it was you." "That's not true," Ava said, eyes wide. "I was coming to return it, I swear." But the hallway had already filled with watching eyes and murmured judgments. Jessica looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Vanessa marched toward Mr. Thompson's office, grabbing Ava by the wrist. Within minutes, Ava stood in front of the manager's desk. Vanessa delivered her version of the story with theatrical concern. "Sir, she's a risk to this company. We hired someone we shouldn't have. First, she sneaks in a beggar. Now she's stealing." Ava tried to speak, but Mr. Thompson cut her off with a wave. "Enough. We don't need drama here. You're dismissed." "Sir, please. Leave, now, or I call security." Ava's heart shattered. 2 days. She had worked 2 days, and now she was being thrown away like she was nothing. She walked out slowly, the gold chain still trembling in her hand. At the door, Vanessa stood waiting. "Next time," she whispered coldly, "know your place." Ava didn't respond. Her throat was too tight, her mind spinning. She walked home in the light rain, each step heavier than the last. The city seemed grayer, meaner. She barely felt the wind against her cheeks or the ache in her feet. When she opened her door, Eli was sitting quietly on the mattress. He turned toward the sound of her footsteps. "You're back early." Ava set her bag down with a tired thud. "I got fired." Eli's brow tightened. "Why?" She sank onto the edge of the mattress. "Vanessa said I stole her chain. I found it in the restroom, but she didn't care. No one did." Eli was silent. Ava gave a bitter, broken smile. "I'm just the poor cleaner who brought a blind man to work. Who would believe me?" She tried to hold herself together, but her voice cracked. "I thought I was strong, but I care. I care so much, and I'm so tired." Her shoulders shook as she finally let the tears fall. Eli didn't speak right away. He sat with his hands resting gently in his lap, his head slightly tilted toward the sound of Ava's sobs. There was something heartbreakingly quiet about her pain. No wailing, no dramatics, just the raw, trembling breaths of someone who had been holding it all in for too long. He waited until the tears had slowed, until her fingers stopped twisting the edge of her scarf, before he said, in a voice as soft as the night, "Good people always win in the end." Ava sniffed, not looking up. "Doesn't feel like it." "I know," Eli said. "Right now, it just feels like everything has fallen apart. But you didn't fail, Ava. You helped someone when you had nothing. You stood up for someone when no one else did. That's not failure. That's courage." She looked at him, eyes rimmed with red. "You really believe that?" Eli turned toward her, his expression calm but steady. "I've lived long enough to know how this world works. Sometimes the ones who start with nothing rise the highest, and the ones who think they're untouchable, they fall." His words settled into her like warm light through cold glass. She didn't answer, just nodded slowly and whispered, "Thank you." The next morning, Ava rose early. There was still heaviness in her chest, but after talking to Eli the night before, something inside her had shifted. She swept the dusty steps outside her door, boiled some water for tea, and hummed quietly under her breath. Eli stirred on the mattress, listening. "Feeling better?" he asked. "A little," she replied. "I think talking helped." That afternoon, Ava walked the streets, knocking on office doors, shops, anywhere that might need a hand. Most turned her away. Some were polite, a few were cruel. When she returned home, her feet ached, her hands were raw, but she didn't complain. She lit a small fire just outside her door, set up a rusted grill, and began roasting corn she had bought from a nearby farm stand with her last few dollars. It wasn't much, but if she sold 10 ears, she could buy food. If she sold 20, she might save a little. Each evening, the fire crackled and the smell of roasted corn filled the air. Passers-by began to notice. Some bought, most didn't. But Ava stood there each night, smiling softly, apron tied tight, her eyes scanning the road like she was waiting for something, or someone. One evening, while turning corn over the flame, Ava felt dizzy. A strange heat surged behind her eyes. The world around her spun. She reached out for balance, but her knees buckled. Everything went black. The next thing she knew, she was waking up in a bed softer than anything she'd ever slept on. The room was quiet. The air smelled of antiseptic and clean sheets. A nurse leaned over her, smiling gently. "You're awake," the nurse said. "That's good. You collapsed from exhaustion, severe malaria, but don't worry, you're safe now." Ava blinked slowly, confusion thick in her chest. Where am I?" "St. Grace Private Hospital," the nurse replied, adjusting Ava's IV drip. "Someone brought you in, paid for everything." "Who?" The nurse smiled again. "He didn't give a name, just said to make sure you got the best care. Left right after you were stabilized." Ava's heart clenched. "Eli." The nurse placed a small object on the table beside her. "He left this." Ava turned her head. There, lying on the polished surface, was a key holder, a small handmade charm shaped like a sun. It wasn't hers, but she knew it instantly. Later that evening, when she was discharged, Ava stepped out of the hospital with the key holder clutched tightly in her hand. The street was busy, taxis honked, vendors shouted, but her eyes searched every corner. Eli was nowhere to be seen. She stood there a long time. "He's blind," she whispered to herself, voice cracking. Where could he have gone? She didn't know, but deep in her heart, she prayed. "Please, let him be safe." In the quiet moments after the story ends, we're left with something more than just a tale of struggle and surprise. We're left with a powerful reminder. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable. Ava had every reason to walk past Eli. She had problems of her own, a fragile life barely held together by grit and hope. But instead, she paused. She saw him. She chose compassion over convenience, and that single act changed her life forever. This story teaches us that true character is revealed in how we treat those who can offer us nothing. Ava didn't help Eli because she expected a reward. She did it because it was the right thing to do. And Eli, in return, saw her not just for her circumstances, but for her heart. In a world obsessed with status, appearance, and wealth, this is what really matters: the quiet strength to do good, even when no one is watching. It also reminds us that your current situation does not define your future. Ava was a cleaner, broke, fired, yet she rose, not by changing who she was, but by staying true to who she'd always been. Integrity, kindness, and courage. Those were her keys to a better life. So wherever you are, whatever you're going through, remember this: keep doing good, keep being human. The world always notices, even if it takes a little time. Now I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this. Let's keep kindness alive, one story at a time.